So this was intended to be right after Easter, so it would be in the Easter mood. And one of the themes for Easter was, suffering and people who suffer and what we should do with them. So this, Julia and I figured out that this would be more or less appropriate. And I know that this is not a Roman Catholic church, but we might have a few previous Catholics.
Oh, you do?
Everybody has their faults.
And Veronica is actually the sixth station of the Stations of the Cross. And how that came to be and the name of it, how it came to be, is a very interesting thing. I think it speaks to our needs as people of faith, people who worship. And so there are lots of, there are the images, there's the Veronica and St Veronica. So I just want to make it clear that there was no biblical figure called Veronica. She's not in the Bible. She is completely made up. And she's made up from the needs of people and worshipers. And the word Veronica is actually a combination of two words. Vera, which means true, or truthfulness, and icon, or ikona, in Greek means image. So you put those together and you get the true image of Jesus. So when Jesus died, of course, there was a great need or desire to personalize Jesus. What did he look like? And so, not by accident, different stories emerged about how you could, or there did exist an image of Jesus. But who would sit and paint a picture of Jesus? Well, there was a rumor, and it turned out to be tradition, and then was written up in many kind of fable, or they're not biblical stories, they're religious stories. And of course they became very popular in the Middle Ages and in the Renaissance. Stories about how there was, or did exist, an image of Jesus. And one of the stories, or the oldest of which, is a story about the king of Edessa. His name was King Abgar. And Abgar was very ill and asked, and powerful, I would say, and sent word that Jesus come and heal him. He became very crippled, very paralyzed, and Jesus was just too busy to come, or to go. And but this man was powerful, and so there were urgent messages, and finally Jesus, at some kind of banquet or some place that was an occasion, took out his his sudarium, and his sudarium is a linen cloth that wealthy Romans carried, and he wiped his face, and he said to one of his disciples, "Take this and show it to King Abgar, and if he believes, he will be healed." The disciple goes. King Akbar says, "Where's Jesus?" The disciple says, "He's not here, but this is for you." And he looks on it, and it has the image of Jesus' face. So what happens to this sudarium, or this true image, which no one painted, but has, of course, the likeness, or the very likeness of Jesus? Well, it was rumored that it was in Edessa, and then it travels to Rome, and many of them begin to appear. As you can imagine. the original supposedly landed in Rome. And before 1954, you could actually visit it. Since 1954, however, they keep it very quiet. I think you have to ask. It still is there. But over the years, since 1954, they've decided that they would keep this story down, make it more quiet. Meanwhile, the people of the North don't really understand that the Veronica means the true image that is the cloth. And Veronica turns into a person who gave Jesus a cloth to wipe his face on the way to Calvary. Right? So the Veronica, or true image, becomes the person. And it's a northern tradition. You will not find a St Veronica in the Eastern Orthodox churches. They don't know who she is. They didn't buy into this. They heard of King Akbar, Akbar, and he was something like 3rd century. So the idea that he was contemporary with Jesus was really not true. Not true. Meanwhile, though, the people who write these true stories, the Golden Legend, modern devotions, a modern devotion movement, these are stories, religious stories that are written, and they're written in vernacular, not Latin. And so these are the bestsellers for the Middle Ages and for the Renaissance. Many of them in the Renaissance, the Golden Legend by Vergini really is the bestseller, more than the Bible. Because they're stories, and they're stories of miraculous events. So Veronica becomes a person. And the reenactment, the Middle Ages and the Renaissance are all full of pageants to make it real. Right? That's the whole point. To make the whole event of the crucifixion, the resurrection, the suffering, the meditation on that. That is why these stories become so popular. So they're pageants and mystery plays. Some of them are in the church, some of them are outside the church. Some of them get funny, incidentally. Some of them get comical. Although that's more for Christmas, but the Easter ones are definitely more serious. And there becomes the movement for devotion, which is all on Holy Week, takes place, and this is where the origin of the Stations of the Cross take place. So if you can't go to Jerusalem, you can make up your own. And Jesus came here, he got the thorns, here, and then Simon of Cyrene picks up the cross for him. Then Veronica is there, wiping his face. So someone gets to play Veronica, even though she's completely made up, and so on. Somebody plays the good thief, the bad thief. It all becomes real. And so I'm going to show you two kinds, actually maybe three kinds of pictures, images that all of this activity engendered. The story of Veronica becoming, the true icon becoming a person, really takes off after 1204, because that's after the first pilgrimage to free Jerusalem. So people come back from Jerusalem and they hear stories of the Veronica. They hear stories. They saw the Holy Sepulchre. They saw this, and so that's when the modern movement of modern devotion begins. Right. So the Veronica becomes someone, and I'm starting out with this because this is a very popular image that you find in a church. And it tells the story. The whole purpose of this is to enlighten people who are illiterate. And here is, Jesus with the cross. Here's Simon. You see Simon Serini here. Can you find Veronica? Yeah. All right, thanks, Veronica. Oh, yeah.
It's pretty too, huh?
Yeah, she's very lovely. Beautiful hair probably helped. So here's Jesus taking, here's your sudari, and here's your cloth to wipe your head. This kind of helmet here, many images of Jews in the Middle Ages had them with these conical caps. And here you can see, here's one of the thieves. So it all is, made to tell the viewer this is how it happened, but it's brought up to date. These are these contemporary characters over here, and we think this took place in Bruges. So this is Bruges, but Bruges with the Dome of the Rock, and here's the Dome of the Rock and the Holy Sepulchre, all made up. Right, now the Dome of the Rock is Islamic, and it's 7th century, so the Dome of the Rock has been there for years. So that marks the Temple Mount. However, by this time, Constantine had built the Holy Sepulchre and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. It's probably not where Jesus was crucified, but good enough. Good enough for the whole